Hey slugs! Today I wanted to take a look at a couple of my most recent videos and talk about the creative decisions that go into making them. So the first one I wanted to talk about is my video for 2161 aquadoser. Aqua, whatever. The very first interaction anyone has with a video is the thumbnail. It's their first impression of what the video is going to be about, and it's important to set the tone and character of what to expect. As such, I think it's really important to spend a good deal of time working on a thumbnail. I'm not by any means a master of this art. I think my thumbnails are good. I don't think they're great, but I do spend roughly about an hour for each video thumbnail. They really are the first thing that comes into play when a viewer looks at a video and decides whether or not to watch it. So I feel like if you're not spending time and effort working on a thumbnail that's going to draw some eyes, then you're doing yourself a disservice overall. However, like I said, I'm not an expert on making thumbnails. I don't have a graphic design background or anything of the sort. I make all of the thumbnails for my channel in PowerPoint, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. With that being said, let's take a look at the thumbnail for the aquadoser video, because it started in a very different place. So right here we have the video you didn't see. This is basically where I started with the thumbnail design. And I spent a lot of time on this, like a lot of time. This was probably at least an hour, shaping the logo and finding a font that matched and changing that out and cutting out all the different assets and making it pop. And then if you add to that the photography, like the time it takes to set up the photo itself, yeah, it adds up. And yeah, this was a lot of effort to put this together, and it's fine. It's okay, but I don't know, to me this just looks like a very typical Slugger video, and I could see people passing this up pretty easily. So ultimately what I did is I went through my photos again and found one that had really dynamic lighting that I really enjoyed, that didn't actually find a place into the video itself. There's a shot that's similar in the video, but it's not quite exactly this with the same dynamic lighting. And I used this as my starting point, added in some black splatter effects, and matched the text color to the color of the vehicle. So I had a hard contrast between orange and green, which really made it pop. Typically with thumbnails, like your go-to, bog standard design is to grab white text and add some black shadow, no blur on the shadow, full opacity, that sort of thing. You just stick it together, bada bing, bada boom, you got yourself a thumbnail. But I sometimes like to steer away from that if I can. I did the same thing with the sand purple thumbnail. I made the name of sand purple literally purple, and there was a bit of a discussion on whether or not to make it white, because I made a version with the white text as well. But in the end, the purple text did really well. A lot of people clicked on it and enjoyed the video. It was my best performing video in a long time. And that can partially be attributed to the thumbnail being a little bit more unique, or the topic being a little bit more unique, those sorts of things. You never know, honestly, when it comes down to it, whether or not people are clicking on a video because of the topic. Sometimes the thumbnail is what garners that sort of stuff, but I don't want to make it sound like the more time you spend on a thumbnail, the more clicks your video gets, because there isn't a one-to-one relationship like that. I can pull up two examples right here. One that I spent a lot of time on the thumbnail for, and that many, that sort of viewership turnout. And then the other one, I spent a lot less time on the thumbnail and much higher viewership turnout. So sometimes it's not up to your control, and you got to be okay with that. You can't fixate on it too much. It's just, put your best foot forward and hope for the best, and then move on. Another aspect I wanted to talk about is how things change within the video itself, within the production period. So sometimes you plan for something to go one way and it ends up going the other. So as an example here, I spent a good deal of time building this Explorians mock, basically like a home base, because I planned for a shot, this shot right here, to be featured in the video, in the AquaZone video, but it didn't make the cut in the end because there just wasn't a good organic place to fit it in. Initially I wanted it in there, but it just didn't come about, right? So Sometimes, like in the film world, they call it you have to kill your babies. Sometimes you have a baby. I mean, it's not a literal baby, but it's something that you put a lot of care and effort into. But in order to make the product at the end, like the end results, more artistic and like better, you have to let those things go. You have to be willing to kill your babies. So this was an example of that. There's this shot of the Explorians paying off Slugger in the video, where they're trying to bribe him, you know, to vouch for their Explorians VPN, which, by the way, is, I don't think I'll ever be able to top that. It just, it's only downhill from here. That is the single greatest thing I've ever created. So. Anyways, I took two different versions of this shot. One of them is the one you see in the video against the gold background, and the other one, very similar shot, similar composition, is this one, where they're in the Explorians base, because I was trying to, you know, find a use for it. In the end, though, between these two shots, while the one where they're in the Explorians base is visually dynamic and interesting, I felt that it focused on the wrong element. Basically, the element that should be focused on here is the $100 bill in the Explorian's hand. That's the draw of this scene. That's the purpose of this photo. And if I throw in a huge background thing that's distracting visually, then all of a sudden the eye is drawn away. And I actually felt that the gold background communicated something too. Gold being like money, you know, like there's some sort of like wealth that is communicated through that color. So I felt that in this circumstance, less was more. It was better to go with the minimalist shot rather than to try to get fancy with it. I'm sure this mock will make appearances in future Slugger videos somewhere down the road, so it's not all wasted effort or anything like that. But I thought it was interesting to talk about how your intentions when you set out to, you know, go into production with a video sometimes change throughout. The last thing I wanted to mention here today was some of the edits that I've been getting a little bit more creative with over time. They've existed before, but I get folks pointing out some of the clever transitions between scenes, and I've been kind of leaning into it a little bit. Sometimes it just feels like showing off, but they really do sometimes happen as you're editing a video. You realize that the two shots you're going to put back to back have some element in them that's consistent, that draws the eye, that can be utilized to make something seamless. So how do I do this? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Basically, when you're setting up a crossfade, you want your old scene and then the new scene that you're crossfading to. So you set the crossfade in between the two of them, and then you put the playhead about halfway through. So you get about 50% opacity on the new scene. And then you start grabbing and moving them so that whatever the eye is drawn to matches up between the two. Oftentimes, this is a character's face, so you want to try to focus in on what is the eye being naturally drawn to. We as human beings are just drawn to faces, so whenever I'm photographing Lego, for example, I'm always making sure the minifigures' faces are the most in focus. They're usually, 9 times out of 10, the most important thing to have in focus is to make sure the face is in focus. Sometimes they're holding something and that is more important, like the $100 bill like I was talking about earlier, but more often than not, we're focused on the faces. So I'm thinking about that as I'm making these videos too. And when it comes to doing these fancy crossfade sort of things, I'm trying to chain that together so that we're not having to dart the eyes around the screen. Your eyes were already focused on this point, and so they'll be focused on this point in the next scene as well. Anyways, these are just some of the things I'm thinking about while I'm making these things. So if you found that insightful, that's cool. If you found it helpful because you're making your own videos, then that's great as well. Whatever helps build upon your craft as an artist. What are we going to talk about next time on Slugging Around? I have no idea. Who knows? Who cares? I'll see you next time.